If you've already seen our short video on how to build a cheap voltmeter, this is going to look very familiar. In today's video, we're going to see how to transform this into this. Let's first take a look at how to build the enclosure for this. We are first building the side and the back panels of the enclosure. We are using balsa wood, which is soft and very easy to cut and process. During the build process, it's critically important to make sure you're measuring each part carefully. Using calipers for measuring parts of the circuit, such as like the screws and the PCB, will make life tremendously easy. After building the side panels as well as the bottom panel, we then start to build the top panel, which is supposed to cover the entire top part of the enclosure. Once the top panel is ready, we need to cut out parts to expose the 3-digit display as well as the white switch on the right. But before we do the cutout, in order to make sure the cutout is precise, we first carefully measure and mark where that precise cutout has to be. After marking the cutout bit on the top panel, we then use a fine tip router drill bit to go around, basically trace the cutout piece. Even after using a fine tip router drill bit, the cutout part will have rough edges that need to be smoothed out. Rather than using a sandpaper, I would recommend using a file like you see in order to do a good job of smoothing out. The last thing we need to do on the front panel is to remove the small square that's going to expose the white switch I talked about earlier. So we go back to our fine tip router drill bit to remove that piece, and we file the rough edges to complete the process. Once the faceplate is ready, we are going to attach it to the body using magnetic means. In order to do that, we go around the edges using simple pins, as you can see. We are going to place 3 pins per side, excluding the bottom side. We carefully place each pin, starting with the corners first, and we make sure that the pin goes through the faceplate as well as the wall, wooden wall below it. Because we are using balsa wood, placing pins this way is pretty easy. You can just do it by hand. You may need to use pliers to push the pins through. After placing all of the pins onto the faceplate, we then remove the faceplate, and then we remove each pin carefully. And the holes created by each pin is going to be clearly visible at the back of the faceplate. In order to make the holes created by the pins clearly visible, we use a marker pen. Small and strong neodymium magnets will be used and placed into the holes created by the pins in the previous step. Using a tool that is almost the same size as the magnets we are going to be using, we will enlarge the holes to make sure each magnet snugly fits. You may use a drill to give the final finishing touches. Once the holes are ready, carefully place each magnet into a hole. You may need to use a glue gun at this stage to make sure each magnet is firmly put in place. After completing the work on the faceplate, carefully pick each pin and push them all the way through to the holes on the wall of the enclosure. You need to make sure each pin aligns well with the magnet on the faceplate. We will also cover the on-off switch using the same balsa wood. In order to do that, cut a piece from the balsa wood to the same size of the switch and simply use a glue gun to firmly put it in place. We now have the top half of the bottom plate left. So same as in the face plate, we are going to cut the balsa wood to size to cover that hole, but we are going to be careful in terms of exposing the connector, the white connector on the right side. After carefully measuring, we are going to make a hole to expose that connector. After completing the bottom faceplate, exposing the white connector, we are going to apply the same magnetic attachment system as we did on the faceplate. The process is exactly the same. We're going to use pins and magnets. This is going to be simpler because we just need to place 4 pins to hold that bottom plate in place. And that completes our enclosure construction. As the next step, let's see how we can actually create a cable that will allow us to do USB port power testing. After completing the USB cable, we tested using a power bank, and we would expect to see around 5 volts reading. As the final step, let's paint our enclosure and finish. This is our completed project. You can remove the magnetic face plates anytime to insert the cable or to perform calibration as and when needed. Thank you for watching.